Good morning, class 7. Today we will continue with the chapter New Kings and Kingdom. What we have studied that day, let's do a quick recap of that. We have studied that from 7th century till 12th century, it was the beginning of medieval period. And India is known as a subcontinent because it is a distinct landmass and not just a country, where we will be studying about different rulers who came in this time period. So, emergence of the new dynasties we have studied that day. These new dynasties came up when the landlords or samantas who were helping the kings, they took over the area and declared themselves the ruler. What were the functions of a samanta? Samantas were the helpers, or they helped the king in the way by providing them with the army when it was the time of war. They gave gifts to the kings. But gradually what happened was that they gained power and wealth, so they thought that why to be under subjugation of someone, so they declared themselves the rulers. Different dynasties came up. They were Gurjar Pratiharas, Rashtrakutas and Palas. We have seen their empire in the map above. Okay, then we have talked about Danti Durga, a Rashtrakuta chief who declared himself the king, and for that he had performed a ceremony because he was not from from the Chalukya dynasty who have treated him or he was a Samanta in the Chalukya dynasty. So he had to perform a ritual, and that ritual which he performed is known as Hiranya Garbha, that is the golden womb. And gradually after that he became the ruler. Then we have talked about the two other Brahmins who also declared themselves the ruler. One was Mayur Sharman and the other was Harichandra, who gave up their traditional profession and declared themselves to be the Kshatriyas and the rulers. Fine. So today we will be starting with the Prashastis and land grants. Okay, yeah, one more thing was there that we have talked about the the kings who became the kings. They took up different titles which had very impactful, very big titles like Maharaja Dhiraj, Tribhuvan Chakravartin, and just to show that they are very powerful, but then they couldn't rule the kingdom all by themselves. So they had different people to help them. There were several taxes for the management of the administration. Now, Prashastis and land grants. Prashastis contain detail that may not be literally true, but they tell us how rulers wanted to depict themselves as valiant, victorious warriors. For example, these were composed by learned Brahmins who occasionally helped in administration. So, when a person is for example, a historian, when he wants to collect some information about a king, he refers to these Prashastis, but at times these Prashastis didn't have all the correct information because it was written in the influence of the king. So obviously the Brahmins who wrote it, it was they praised the king. So sometimes the praise was deserving and sometimes it was little exaggeration. Okay. The achievements of Nagabhatta. Many rulers described their achievements in Prashastis. You read about Prashasti of Gupta ruler Samudragupta last year. One Prashasti written in Sanskrit and found in Gwalior, Madhya Pradesh, describes the exploits of Nagabhat, a Parihara king, as follows. The king of Andhra, Sandhavya, that is Sindh, Vidarbha, part of Maharashtra, and Kalinga, that is part of Orissa, fell before him even as he was a prince. He won a victory over Chakrayudh, the ruler of Kannauj. He defeated the king of Vanga, part of Bengal, Anartha, part of Gujarat, Malava, part of Madhya Pradesh, Kirata, forest people, Tanushka, that is Turks, Vatsa, Matsya, both kingdoms in North India. King often rewarded Brahmins by grants of land. These were recorded on copper plates which were given to those who received the lands. So like in present context, we have papers of if we have a land or your parents have the lands, they have the papers of it. So that nobody can come and claim that this land belongs to some other person. Same ways, in those times, these kings gave these copper plates on which it was mentioned that these lands belong, that particular land belonged to a particular person. Okay, what was given with the land? This is part of Tamil section of a land grant given by the Cholas. We have demarcated the boundaries of the land by making earthen embankment as well as by planting thorny bushes. This is what the land contains: fruit bearing trees, water, land, garden and orchards, trees, wells, open spaces, pasture land, a village, ant hills, platforms, canals, ditches, rivers, silt-laden land, tanks, granaries, fish ponds, beehives, and deep lakes. He who receives the land can collect taxes from it. He can collect the taxes imposed by judicial officers as fines, the tax on the betel leaves, that on the woven cloth, as well as on the vehicles. He can build large rooms with upper stories made of baked bricks. He can get large and small wells dug. He can plant trees and thorny bushes. If necessary, he can get canals constructed for irrigation. He should ensure that water is not wasted and that embankments are built. List all the possible sources of irrigation mentioned in the inscription and discuss how these might have been used. Okay, so these are like the when we talk about the Chola kingdom, they have also given the land grants and for different purposes. So these purposes are mentioned here, like why they have given those land grants. Unusual for the 12th century was a long Sanskrit poem containing the history of kings who ruled over Kashmir. It was composed by an author named Kalhan. He used a variety of sources, including inscriptions, documents, eyewitnesses, accounts, and earlier histories to write his account. Unlike the writers of Prashastis, he was often critical about rulers and their policies. So here we see that there was a difference in the Prashasti which was written by Kalhan in Kashmir. He has been critical about the rulers. That means whatever policies he felt was not beneficial for the people of Kashmir, he has criticized them. But other Prashasti writers or Brahmins who have written the Prashastis, they have not done this way. They have all praised the king because in return they got prizes and they were rewarded therefore. Okay, so warfare for wealth. You may have noticed that each of these ruling dynasties was based in a specific region. At the same time, they tried to control other areas. One particularly prized area was the city of Kannauj in the Ganga Valley. For centuries, rulers belonging to Gurjar Pratihara, Rashtrakuta and Pala dynasties fought for control over Kannauj. Because there were three parties in this long-drawn conflict, historians often describe it as the tripartite struggle. So you will be able to explain what is tripartite struggle. It was a fight between Gurjar Pratihara, Rashtrakutas and Palas for Kannauj. Now you tell me why Kannauj was the area for which these three kingdoms were fighting. Okay, we will discuss it because yes, you are right, because of the Doab, and it was a fertile land. As we will see, PP 62 to 66, rulers also tried to demonstrate their power and resources by building large temples. So when they attacked one another's kingdom, they often chose to target temples, which were sometimes extremely rich. You will read more about this in chapter 5. So the rulers, these three kingdoms were fighting among themselves. There was a tripartite struggle for the control over Kannauj, that was in Ganga Valley, and the rulers used the money in building magnificent temples to show their glory, to enhance, prove that they are very powerful. And when they attacked each other, they targeted these temples because they knew that it is the area, it is the place where lot of money the king has utilized. One of the best known of such ruler is Sultan Mahmud of Ghazni, Afghanistan. He ruled from 997 to 1030 and extended control over parts of Central Asia, Iran, and the northwestern part of the subcontinent. He raided the subcontinent almost every year. His targets were wealthy temples, including that of Somnath of Gujarat. Much of the wealth Mahmud carried away was used to create a splendid capital city at Ghazni. He is famous for the expeditions which he raised to our country, and he utilized that money which he had exploited and taken from our country in building his capital at Ghazni. Sultan Mahmud was also interested in finding out more about the people he conquered, and he entrusted a scholar named Al-Biruni to write an account of the subcontinent. This Arabic work, known as Kitabul Hind, remains an important source for historians. He consulted Sanskrit scholars to prepare this account. So Mahmud Ghazni wanted to know more about the people of the subcontinent where he has been continuously exploiting. So he has asked one person, Al-Biruni, to write an account, and the book which he has written is known as Kitabul Hind, where he has taken the help from the Sanskrit scholars in writing that book. Other kings who engaged in warfare included the Chahmanas, later known as Chauhans, who ruled over the region around Delhi and Ajmer. They attempted to expand their kingdom to the west and east, where they were opposed by the Chalukyas of Gujarat and Gahdalwas of western Uttar Pradesh. The best known Chahmana ruler was Prithviraj III from 1168 to 1192, who defeated an Afghan ruler named Sultan Muhammad Ghori in 1191, but lost to him the very next year in 1192. So in the first battle, he has defeated him, whereas in the second battle, he was himself defeated and killed. Now just have a closer look at the map of Cholas. You can see how expanded it is. It has the area like Madurai, Gangavadi, Kanchi, then Kakatiyas, Vengi, South Kalinga, that is Lair, Orissa, all that was under the Chola Empire. From Urayur to Thanjavur. How did the Cholas rise to power? A minor chiefly family known as the Muttariyar held power in the Kaveri Delta. They were subordinate to the Pallav king of Kanchipuram. Vijayalaya, who belonged to the ancient chiefly family of the Cholas from Urayur, captured the delta from the Muttariyar in the middle of the 9th century. he built the town of Thanjavur and a temple for goddess Nishumbhasudini there. The successors of Vijayalaya conquered neighboring regions and kingdom grew in size and power. The Pandyan and the Pallava territories to the south and north were made part of this kingdom. So this is how the Cholas came to power. That is, so how these Cholas came to power. Cholas, they were a minor chief, like a family who were working under the rulers of Pallava dynasty. But one of these, like Vijayalaya, who belonged to this family, he what did he do? He captured the delta, that is the fertile area from Muttariyar, and in the middle of the 9th century, and there he built a town called Thanjavur, where he has a temple for the goddess. This person, this is like Vijayalaya, he declared himself, and then his successors, what they did was they grew in power and expanded the kingdom, and they were known as the Cholas. One of the famous ruler was Raja I, considered the most powerful Chola ruler, became king in 985 and expanded control over most of these areas. He also reorganized the administration of the empire. Raja's son Rajendra I continued his policies and even raided the Ganga valley, Sri Lanka and countries of Southeast Asia, developing a navy for these expeditions. So you can understand that navy was there in that time as well. These rulers maintained the navy for the expeditions. Now, splendid temples and bronze sculpture. We all know, if you have visited South India, you must have seen. If you have not visited, then also you must be aware that there are like large number of temples and they are very magnificent. So we will be studying about their history. The big temples of Thanjavur and Gangaikonda Cholapuram, built by Raja and Rajendra, are architectural and sculptural marvels. Chola temple often became the nuclei of settlements which grew around them. These were centers of craft production. Temples were also endowed with land by rulers as well as by others. So these temples were like you can see the beauty which is there in the picture, and the king gave the areas like large amount of land, huge land, to these temples for their maintenance. The produce of this land went into maintaining all the specialists who worked at the temple and very often lived near it. Priests, garland makers, cooks, sweepers, musicians, dancers, etc. In other words, temples were not only places of worship, they were the hub of economic, social and cultural life as well. So whatever was grown in that area, and that was used for the maintenance, for taking care of the priest, person who was making the garland, the cooks, the sweepers and musicians and dancers who were living in the temple. Amongst the crafts associated with temples, the making of bronze image was the most distinctive. Chola bronze image are considered amongst the finest in the world. While most images were of deities, sometimes images were made of devotees as well. So they used to make, the craftsmen used to make the bronze images of deities and sometimes of some popular people as well. So please revise the chapter which like the portion which we have done today. If you have any queries, you can ask me. Take care of yourselves. Be safe at home. Thank you, class.